a nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit. I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut. Today we'll go bird watching, tomorrow we'll catch toads. The next day we'll take photographs of bugs along the road. I never get the feeling that I'm in a rut. That's why I'm a nature nut. Well, I'm a nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit. I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut.
Hello there, Nature Nuts. How are you? We're doing a little bit of bird watching this morning, and I'm in downtown Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, but I could be downtown just about anywhere in North America. I'll bet you know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for peregrine falcons, a magnificent bird of prey and the fastest bird on Earth. Now, there's a nest on the TELUS building behind me, and that's why we're here. And they'll set up little cameras to keep track of what's going on at the nest, and a feed to a little video monitor. So why don't we go and spy on the birds, see what they're up to right now.
Around North America, video cameras on peregrine nests send images to television, zoos, and the internet.
Downtown falcon surveillance goes on in unfamiliar territory for people like me. It's hard to remember in a place like this that we are working with wild birds of prey, but despite the industrial feel of this monitoring station, tucked away amid so many pipes and humming gonculators, the birds clearly think of themselves as wild and natural, and to them, the city below is so much noise and fuss far beneath their notice. There are 4 chicks in this nest, and I was happy to be watching when one of the parent birds came in with a meal for the babies. Now, I couldn't tell what sort of bird it was that was being ripped to pieces here, but the falcons often hunt in wetlands just outside the city, bringing back such things as shorebirds, black terns, and grebes. You'd think they'd stick to pigeons, but the truth is that falcons think like falcons, not like people, and maybe they get tired of pigeons. Well, this is Expo, and Expo is a peregrine falcon. Let's take this opportunity to review how you tell peregrine falcons from other falcons, other sorts of birds of prey. I mean, after all, if you're going to get excited about the peregrine falcon, you better know how to tell it from another sort of, raptorial bird. Raptors, we call them. Raptor means grabber, and that's what they do best. Now, you can tell that Expo's a falcon by the very pointed wings, longish tail, and by that little tooth, the extra tooth on the upper mandible of the bill. We call that a tomial tooth. Falcons have got it. Other birds of prey generally don't. They're fast-flying, open-air birds, and, gorgeous, gorgeous. You've got to like falcons. Now, there are other falcons in North America that are much, much more common than the peregrine, and you're much more likely to see birds like the American kestrel, a small falcon that sits on telephone wires, catches mostly insects, or the merlin, which is kind of like a smaller version of the peregrine, but not as boldly colored. And of course, you'd never mistake one of the soaring hawks for a peregrine falcon, would you? A bird like a red-tailed hawk or a Swainson's hawk with the very broad wings and, the tendency to soar around in circles in the sky and drop down on their prey that way. Peregrines sometimes soar, but for the most part, they're speedy, fast-flying, very impressive critters. So, now that you're sure you're not going to mistake a peregrine for a red-tailed hawk or anything like that, let's just quickly review the things that make peregrine falcons peregrine falcons. The most obvious thing, even at a distance, is that beautifully marked head, a very strong face pattern with a dark hood that comes right down onto the cheeks. and a slaty blue-black back. Blue-black back is an excellent field mark, especially for the adult peregrine. Anyway, peregrine falcon, beautiful. Oh, one more thing. The cere, the fleshy area around the nostrils and the feet, yellow. And in the wild birds, even more yellow because they're getting pigment from their prey. Absolutely gorgeous. Not to say that you're not gorgeous, Expo. In fact, you're probably the most gorgeous bird I've ever held on my hand. Absolutely stunning. Peregrine falcon. Can't mistake them.
The accipiter hawks look a bit like falcons but have rounded wings and the ability to hunt birds by dodging around branches in the forest.
You know, it was back in the 1960s that biologists and bird watchers out in places like this, they started to notice that they weren't seeing as many peregrines as they used to. They were seeing fewer nesting pairs, more single birds, and they were especially noticing that they were seeing very few juvenile birds. This one here, this was an immature peregrine. A young one, you can tell it's young because its feet are kind of grayish instead of yellow, and because the streaks on the breast run up and down rather than side to side, the barring of the adult plumage. Because there were fewer young birds, they figured maybe the peregrine was having trouble reproducing, and that's exactly what was happening. It was a mystery for a few years, but fortunately, a researcher in Britain, Derek Ratcliffe, he figured out what the problem was. It had to do with the eggs of the peregrines. This is a bit of peregrine eggshell right here, beautiful mottled brown color. The problem had to do with the pesticide DDT, which turns to DDE in the body of the birds. This pesticide was being used very extensively. You spray it on the bugs, birds eat the bugs, then the peregrines eat the birds that ate the bugs, and by the time you get up to the level of the peregrine in the food chain, there's a lot of pesticide in their bodies. And this egg failed to hatch because when the adult bird sat on the egg to incubate it, the egg simply crushed. The shell of the egg was thinner because the bird had too much of the pesticide DDT in its body. And this egg here failed to hatch just a few years ago in 1988. And it turns out that there are still lots and lots of pesticides in the bodies of just about every peregrine alive today. Scary business. So once they knew what the problem was, biologists and conservationists also knew what they had to do to solve the situation for the peregrines. They took a bunch of birds from the wild, the last remaining birds, basically brought them into captivity, birds like this one, and these birds became the critical breeding stock to get the continental peregrine, the anatom peregrine, through these tough years. They were able to get around the eggshell problem by helping the chicks hatch and to incubate them away from the parent birds, and then it's quite a complex business, but they figured out the techniques, and now these birds have produced enough chicks that the peregrine has a fighting chance again. The other good news is that DDT has been banned in North America for some time now, still used in South America, but the mosquitoes in South America are developing resistance to DDT, so they're using less of it down there too. Not that it's all a bad thing. Of course, mosquitoes in South America carry malaria, so DDT has saved many lives. It's just one of those confusing stories.
The least DDT-laden peregrines on Earth live in Scotland, where they feed mostly on racing pigeons, much to the racers' chagrin.
This is a baby peregrine falcon, a chick, and I'm feeding it. Each up, each up, each up. Oh, I think that's a little too big for you, buddy. Hold on. I'm feeding them quail burger, whole ground up raw quail. There's something you won't see on the menu terribly often. Feathers and guts and everything. Each up, each up, each up. Each up, each up. How's that? Pretty good? We're at a private peregrine rearing facility that provides chicks for fostering to nests in the wild, and it's really interesting the way they breed these things and rear the chicks. There you go. Oh boy, you're a little pig, aren't you? They grow like crazy. The interesting thing is, right now, this little bird thinks it's being fed by an adult peregrine falcon. As soon as it's old enough to see, there's a chance that they will become imprinted on people. They will think either that they are human beings or that we are peregrine falcons. That would mess up their chances for survival. But right now, each-up, 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 their chances are much better if they're looked after by people. So these birds will eventually be shifted over to peregrine falcon nests, but for now, they have to be fed quite often. Each-up, each-up, each-up. Apparently that's what you say to them when you're feeding them. Each-up, that's what the parents say to them. Oh, good raw meat. Each-up, each-up, each-up. Oh, you missed. Each-up, each-up. Sorry, there was no bone in that one. Oh, boy, you're a happy little eater, that little guy. Unbelievable. Each-up, 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 each-up. Oh, yeah. Wow. Hard to fill one of these guys up.
The people at Ups and Downs Birds put a lot of effort into their falcons, bringing them fresh quail every day, delivered in the quail pail, of course. They keep their quarters clean and tidy, and the falcons seem to appreciate it. The chicks are carefully tended in the first days of their lives, when they are kept in heated artificial nests and continually monitored for health and weight gain. When they are old enough, they will be sold to government conservation agencies and then placed in wild falcon nests. Phil Treffery has been doing this sort of work for many years now, and he is one of the most knowledgeable peregrine breeders on the planet, having pioneered many of the techniques that are now standard practice. Well, let me tell you, if you want to really appreciate the power and courage of a peregrine falcon, you should become a fish and wildlife biologist and go band some peregrine chicks. We joined the team from Alberta Environmental Protection and found that these birds, which look so stately from afar, may take on a whole new dimension up close. I was told that the female on the Telus building would sit on the rail and scream at me, but no one expected her to streak back into the nest with the 3 biologists and the TV crew right there. My friend Gord Court was able to catch the female easily, and once she was in the hand, we were able to settle back down, knowing that the male wasn't quite so bold.
Alright, they're angry birds. The idea here, of course, is that we get in as quickly as possible and get out as quickly as possible. Try not to harass the birds. You do it just once a year on the chicks, and get some good information from that. This bird has an attitude, I gotta tell you. Apparently, in order to get this nest site, she came in, killed the other bird that was here already, and ate her right here on this ledge. Serious bird of prey.
987-87233.
Ready? Release Waterwick. There you go, baby.
Once old 987-87233 was back in the air, we skipped across town to another peregrine nest, where we were out on an open rooftop to band the chicks. Here, the air show was more than enough to convince me that this is one of the most impressive flyers on Earth, and that peregrines truly believe that they own the entire planet, an attitude most of us think is reserved for people. Gord Court was hit 8 times by the female falcon, and without protective gear he'd have been injured for sure. The male and female peregrine moved so fast that the 2 birds could at times seem like 10. It's lovely to see them rush past, stall at the top of their arc, and then return to deliver their open-handed blows at incredible speed. City falcons, by the way, are much more likely to strike than country falcons, since they have little or no regard for people. Falcons are accustomed to conflict, and they do not abandon their chicks after people have handled them.
Peregrine, you're back again to terrorize our country skies. Peregrination across the nation, breaking free from DDT. Oh, once upon a time you were the duck hawk, a bird renowned for beauty and for speed. Around the world on ledges, cliffs, and flat rocks, choice of kings of old in falconry. Peregrine, you're back again to terrorize our country skies. Peregrination across the nation, breaking free from DDT.
Oh, the 60s were a time of social unrest, a leaky, tragic decade for these birds. Pesticide enthusiasts endeavored till around the world the warning could be heard.
Men, these birds are in trouble.
So they rounded up the last wild flying falcons, and they settled them in cages for to breed. They waited for the news of fewer toxins, then waved their wings to thank the Conservation Agency. Peregrine, you're back again to terrorize our country skies. Peregrination across the nation, breaking free from DDT. There is no other explanation. Breaking free.
Okay, well, let's just take a little bit of a break from the Peregrine Falcon, have a look at the other large common falcon that we might see in the summertime, in the west at least. This is a western falcon, the Prairie Falcon. And there's a Prairie Falcon up on the hillside there, very typical place to find a Prairie Falcon along the river valleys in the prairies. Go figure. But what a good looking bird. Notice that it doesn't have the same dark hooded head pattern as a peregrine. It's a much browner bird. Oh, and there she goes. Have a look at her in flight, assuming that's a she. Beautiful bird, and the main thing to look for are those dark wing pits. It looks like she hasn't scrubbed under those wings for a couple of months. It's not true, of course. Or actually, I guess it is true. They never scrub under their wings. They do apparently bathe about every day, though, because they live a gruesome, grisly life with lots of blood, if you know what I mean. The nice thing about the Prairie Falcon is it didn't take the same sort of a beating from pesticides that the peregrine took. That's because while peregrines eat mostly birds, prairie falcons will also take a large number of rodents, so they're not picking up the pesticides that way. As well, the prairie falcon is a short-distance migrant, stays in North America for the most part, while the peregrine falcons are going all the way down into South and Central America. It's just one of those little ecological quirks. When something changed in the environment, one species did not too badly, the other species got hammered. Kind of too bad for the peregrines, but I love prairie falcons. It's the falcon I grew up with. Well, you know, I saved the best to last. After 30 years, we finally got peregrine falcons nesting back on natural cliffs here on this river in central Alberta.
The bird is doing a lot better than it used to. Of course, it's still a very rare bird. There are less than 70 pairs nesting anywhere in Canada, south of 60. So there's still, you know, it's not out of the woods yet. It's just got a toehold on the old cliff of life. But these birds behind me, they've got a wonderful situation. It's a high cliff overlooking a big bend in the river. They can scan their domain, watch for whatever little birds they want to rush out and catch for lunch, dinner, breakfast, what have you. The chicks are doing well. There are, of course, dangers here that there wouldn't be in the city, but of course they don't have to worry about buses and things like that. I'm keeping a respectable distance. But I've got to tell you, I'm just happy to see them with all this greenery in the background rather than concrete. Not that there's anything wrong with concrete. A city peregrine is exactly the same bird as a country peregrine. They're both very spectacular. These ones are just luckier.
Peregrine falcons were once called duckhawks, a name which really does not do them justice.
Yeah, you know, there's no such thing as a non-spectacular falcon, but there's something about a peregrine, it's just that much snappier than the rest. And they've had such a long history with people, too. Roger Tory Peterson, he put it this way: man has emerged from the shadows of antiquity with a peregrine on his wrist. Its dispassionate brown eyes, more than those of any other bird, have been witness to the struggle for civilization, from the squalid tents on the steppes of Asia thousands of years ago, to the marble halls of European kings in the 17th century. Bit of a quirky way of summing up the history of civilization, but hey, Peterson was a bird watcher. Anyway, I love peregrines. I hope you can get out and see some for yourself. It's one of the greatest sights in the world of nature, and I love the world of nature. That's why I'm a nature nut, and I hope you are too. See you again soon. Stay out of those squalid tents.
Same time each and every week, uncensored and uncut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut.